My first reading comprehension tip would be to try to read the questions first. There's studies actually that have shown, and this was a study done. It wasn't for GED specifically. It was a study for like I think it was college or something. But it's the same thing, multiple choice test. But basically, there were studies shown that if you read the questions first before you do the test, you'll oftentimes get a better score. So for the sake of time, I would definitely try to glance at the questions before you read the passages. So my second reading comprehension tip would be to focus on what I call the SCCT, and that stands for the setting. Okay, so the SCCT, that stands for setting, characters, conflict, and theme. So going in, this is especially true for fiction, but this does come up on other sections too here, but this is really actually more important than what most people even realize. Whenever you start reading a story, whether it's fiction or sometimes on nonfiction too, you always want to try to get the setting first. The setting is just where the story takes place. It could be a place. It could also be, oftentimes, will be like a time period too. In many cases on GED RLA, you're often going to have older time periods, a lot of stories that are older. So definitely the setting is really important for two reasons. Number one, you might get a question asking you something like point blank, what is the setting? But it's also important because, in order to have a mental picture of what you're reading, which you should be trying to do when you're reading, some people are better at visualizing than others. I know that that's a skill that some people are just more visual. When you're reading, you try to picture what's happening in your head, just like a movie. And in order to really do that, you have to know what the setting is. Like, if the setting is say in the middle of a city, like it's in the middle of a busy city versus a farm set out in the middle of nowhere, right? If a story is taking place out on a farm, or if it's taking place like in the middle of a busy city, can't you see how that's going to have a whole different mental picture to it? One of the main reasons people lose track of what's happening while they're reading is because the setting changes and they don't realize it. So keeping track of the different characters is another reason why a lot of people have trouble. And, there's main characters and there's supporting characters. And main characters are hopefully pretty obvious most of the time because main characters are going to be, the central characters in the story, and then supporting characters don't really usually play a big role. So a lot of times, many of the questions are going to come about main characters. So if you've got like 10 different characters and it's hard to keep them all straight, figuring out which ones are the main characters is usually going to help you because not all of them are going to be equally important. And, also, if you can come up with a way to keep the characters straight in your head. Like maybe, if one character is a doctor, you just picture that character. Okay, that character is a doctor, or if somebody is a nurse, or if somebody is whatever the character happens to be, just trying to think of ways to tell the characters apart, all right? And so to give you guys a good strategy here that works, and this is a proven strategy, this is called rap paraphrasing. And, this is just to give you a method. So it's called rap paraphrasing. So you just have to remember the word rap, but the R stands for reading. Just read a paragraph, right? So reading, R stands for, let's say, read paragraph. The A stands for ask, what's the main idea, and two supporting ideas. And then P stands for put it in your own words. So this is just to give you guys a strategy here for when you're reading. You'll read the paragraph and then just pause quickly, and don't pause for too long, obviously, because you're going to waste your time, but just pause and think, what was the main idea of this paragraph? Now, the main idea is usually going to be said to you in just one sentence, and it's probably going to be in the first paragraph, although not always. But the main idea is just like the big general central idea of the paragraph. And supporting ideas are things like facts and evidence, data, anything that points back to that main idea. And then the most important step, though, really is to put it in your own words. And a lot of people, they don't believe me that this is a good trick because they think it's going to take up more time. But, as you're reading, especially on the test, if you can just pause and just ask yourself, do I understand what I'm reading? And try to put it in your own words, in your head. Just try to summarize what just happened. If you read a paragraph or two paragraphs and you don't know what happened, right? If you don't know what's going on, just pause and ask yourself honestly, do I understand what just happened? And if you don't, you're going to want to go back and read it again so that you do. And then go back to the question and read the answer choices. And the answer choice might even just jump out at you if you do that. That was paraphrasing. Another method is the SQR3 method. And so basically the S stands for survey. And this is another really quick tip that a lot of people don't do, but before you just jump into reading a passage, just take time to survey what you're reading, right? Survey the questions. Just look at the questions quickly. Look at the title. I mean, a lot of people skip the title, look at the title, any pictures or images, look at the questions before you go any further, because in many cases, the title and the pictures and the questions can give you valuable information. So don't always jump right into reading it. Just take 30 seconds and just look at the title, look at any pictures, look at anything like that. I think that's going to help you out. And so there's 3 R's. It's called SQR3. So I think the first R stands for read. You just read, pretty self-explanatory. You recite, which is just another way of saying put it in your own words. The review, so the review step, that just means, just kind of review, make sure you've answered all the questions. There's another step in here. I don't think it's really that important for the GED, but basically there's a Q here too. And so the Q stands for questions. And so it really stands for ask yourself questions as you're reading. All right, so you survey everything. You look at the title first, look at the picture, look at the questions that you have to answer. Then as you're reading, ask yourself, do I understand what's happening? Any questions you have about, like, what's this character's role? Who's this person? Just ask yourself in your head questions. Just think about what you're reading. And then at the end, when you get to the phase where you're going to, so you read, and then recite means put it in your own words, as I already said. And then the last R stands for review. So you want to just keep reviewing from time to time and think, am I answering the questions I have about this piece? Do you recommend to read everything? So I think you might be talking about the RLA passages. And so if you have time, yes, I do. Which in many cases, if you're running low on time on the test, then I don't. So it's always better to read it. But if you're really pressed for time, then don't worry about it. You can use kind of like what I call the, seek and destroy method, where, you basically just read the question and just skim the passage until you find the answer. So that's a valid strategy, though, for sure. Definitely, if you're taking practice tests, just practice doing that. Practice reading the question and then just skim through the answer choice, skim through the passage, and see if you can find the answers that way. How to manage time while taking GED RLA test? It's 150 minutes total for RLA. It's 45 for the essay. So 150 minus 45 gives us 105 minutes for the multiple choice, I think. Pretty sure. All right, so, then if there's 105 minutes, all right, for 46 questions, all right, I just did that calculation there, and that comes out to about 2 to 2.5 minutes per one question. I put on the screen my reasoning here so you can see why I'm saying it's 2 to 2.5 minutes per question. Like I said, I just came up with that kind of on the spot here, so just bear with me if that's, it makes sense to me. I'm just trying to think if there's any flaw in my reasoning here, but that's, I would say just a calculation that I just did. 2 to 2.5 minutes per question is what you'd want to shoot for the RLA section.